Welcome to this episode of Estate Agency X. Today I'm talking to James Humphries-Stone from the Avenue Estate Agents. They're a self-employed model that's on a very fast trajectory upwards. James has got a great background. He's worked in traditional estate agency. He worked with PurpleBricks at the very beginning of when they first started out and worked his way through the ranks. And now he's got some very specific views on the way that estate agency is going, how to win more business and what you should be doing to improve your own estate agency. So, James,
Mark.
Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
For the viewers or listeners, can you just give us a bit of background on yourself, how you got into agency, and then the sort of journey that you've been on to get to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So entered the industry in 2004. So I was 17, just left school, started doing A-levels, business, maths, really quite enjoyed it. Bumped into a friend, an old school friend who had just become an estate agent. I don't think anyone actually intentionally goes out to become an agent. I could be wrong, but I think there's many. Bumped into an old school friend. He said, "Do you know what, I'm an estate agent and we're looking for someone and I think you should talk to my boss. I think you'd be really good." Like, why? Because you like to talk. Okay, cool. So I met his boss and the rest is history. I just fell in love with the industry, the way in which it works, the way it's evolved over time. I then progressed within a couple of years. I was a branch manager of an independent firm. Then I joined PurpleBricks at the very outset back in 2014 as a local property expert territory owner. Rose through the ranks there as a regional director, so became regional director for London and the South East. And then got to a point where that business was changing so drastically and moving, in my opinion, so far away from customer and more about just bottom line all the time. And I'm just not built that way. So in 2021, myself, my business partner and my life partner, Hayley, who's also a long-term estate agent, launched the Avenue, which is a self-employed brokerage.
Awesome. So the Avenue seems to be gaining a lot of traction quite quickly. It seems to be just on a fast track to kind of getting noticed and becoming one of the more sort of aspired to self-employed models. So I guess my first question is, because this podcast is primarily around the future of estate agency, like you went through a transition there where it sounds like you worked in a traditional estate agency to start with. Yep. The PurpleBricks model sounded like it was the future of estate agency when it first came along. I think undoubtedly at the time.
At the time, yeah.
And probably was for a period of time, which gained it enough traction to gain outside the big outside investment, which then led to it becoming more just about the bottom line.
Yeah.
So having been through all of that, where do you see the future of estate agency? What's the point of the Avenue?
So I think the perfect blend for us is, I think it's a triangle. There's people first. There's, in my opinion, for a long, long time yet, there's still going to be a need for an agent in the middle. And I think that's where PurpleBricks and the businesses that fall into the category of online are probably getting it wrong, is that there's still a need. Customers still want someone that they can lean on and rely upon and communicate with. And you can't show support and empathy and guidance through technology just yet. Yeah. Obviously, with the introduction of AI, that may all change, but how that affects the industry, we'll soon see. But I do think there's a heavy need for the personal approach. I think there's a real alignment to the future of technology and the blend, hence our relationship with Lifecycle. And I think the direction of travel, in my view, is twofold. One, that it's going to have more support through technology to better enhance the customer journey and enable the agent to do more front end. But also we're going to see a growth in the model like ours of self-employed. There's more stability in it. It's a leaner model for most, so therefore from a cost-based perspective, whether the market's good, bad or indifferent, the model can survive and flourish.
That's a really interesting point, because a lot of people see the investment in technology as a extra expense to their business, and you're seeing it as a way of making your business leaner, and certainly for your self-employed agents, a way of making the business leaner. So can you just dig into then maybe some of the ways that you do that or use technology to do that, as opposed to all the way how it was back in 2004?
Okay, wow. So 2004, I had my hotbox with my clients in, with my Rolodeck of clients. So all of that was manual. Obviously, Rightmove existed, but it was in its infancy, so we were still newspaper advertising. So now we're, newspaper advertising pretty much now doesn't exist. And I think the digital journey that we're certainly embarking on in partnership with Lifecycle is to automate a lot of the mainstream tasks. And it's a real education for the agents. We were talking about it offline beforehand. It's a real education for the agents coming from an arena where every single person has to be called. Every single person has to have a touch point with the human. But in reality, you can bring people into the business and a lot of the journey can be taken care of from the point of view of simple touch points, updates on what's going on within that client's selling journey, for example. It can be done through automation so that then the support mechanism of the agent is much more hands-on than simply this is the latest that's going on with the viewings that have happened.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because, as you say, we were talking about it before we started recording. When you got into a estate agency, it sounds pretty similar to pretty much everybody else's journey and my journey when I got into a estate agency, which was one whereby when my friend asked me to go for an interview at the estate agents, I thought I was going for an interview, a really sort of a proper job, suit. I was nervous and all that. Years later, I realised basically the requirement was a heartbeat, and the reason for that was because most recruitment in a estate agency is we need manpower. As you start to grow, I can't do this all on my own anymore. I need other people to take some of these phone calls. I can't do the viewings and take the inquiries. And I need a person, somebody, hopefully, who's got a brain to come in and start taking some of these calls. Just do it the way that I used to do it, and then another person to do it, and then another person, and before you know
the cycle continues.
You've got maybe one branch, 5 or 6 people working there, but it's all manpower based.
Yeah.
All targets are manpower based. Everything is manpower based, and you don't have a time to stop and think, what has happened in the rest of the world here? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
We spoke before about chasing viewing feedback. Now, a traditional experienced estate agent would rightly say, well, I need all the viewing feedback because I need to go back to the vendor and I need to be able to tell them what's going on and they're going to be asking me and I can't say nothing. No, of course, but just break it down into what is the purpose of going back to the vendor. The vendor doesn't just want the practical information of they thought the third bedroom was too small. The vendor can't do anything about that.
No.
It's not useful information to them. So just relaying that, isn't it? The fact that 15 people went to see it, they all received an email afterwards, only 3 gave us feedback and the other 15 didn't bother. That says it all.
Yeah.
I don't need to spend 3 days leaving voicemails for those other 12 people. But the traditional estate agency is in the mindset that you do, because otherwise you're not doing your job properly.
But it's because it's the way it's always been done.
Yeah.
So it is a mindset shift, as I said quite early on. The mindset shift, we're finding it with the agents that we're partnered with, it's getting them into a headspace where you can be doing more productive work for your client than having to chase back through feedback that, by all intents and purposes, if they were interested, they would say so. They would be picking up the phone, they would be chasing us. And I appreciate that we are moving into and have moved into a slightly different market over the last 12 months. But it still doesn't get away from the fact that if somebody is interested in buying a property, they will say so.
Absolutely. And even if they're not interested, but I want to find out why, well, because it's the wrong price. Okay, there may be some other things. It was too close to the scrapyard. It had a small bedroom. It was on the main road. But again, you can't. There's nothing you can change. You can't change that stuff. Okay, but I want to be able to tell the vendor. But do you want to be able to tell them bad enough that you're going to have to employ 5 people to leave voice messages for the next 3 days just to get that information? Or do you want to move on to do more meaningful tasks and get more listings and sell more houses and make more profit?
Yeah.
So I guess from your point of view, having a self-employed partner model, it's not, maybe in the long term it's viable, but in the short term it's not viable for a self-employed person to start off and just employ 3 admin people to help them out. It's not going to make them any money.
Makes no sense.
So they need that kind of automation and efficiency, really, don't
Absolutely. I think the big thing for us is, coming back to your point just now around the way in which agents in offices predominantly work, I think the launch and the growth of platforms like Rightmove and Zoopla, it was a blessing and a curse for the industry. People complain about the cost of Rightmove all the time, but when they actually look back and see where the lion's share of their incoming traffic is coming from because of, quite frankly, lazy behaviours, then actually cost per acquired client is actually relatively low.
Yeah.
So it's the blessing and the curse is that it's actually made estate agents' lives easier to grab buyers' attention. But the downside is I believe that most estate agents have become data processors and order takers. There's no real skill anymore. There's no real negotiation. There's no real get out there and go about it. It's a case of, well, someone will come to us. But I think that transition that we're making, especially at the front end when we're first launching a partner, it's become very social media heavy now. So where we can create lead magnets and we can create funnels and journeys and audiences specific to that agent and their marketplace, and then take a customer on that journey, we've obviously been with Lifecycle a brief period of time, but we're already seeing a significant change in the way clients are interacting with our partners on the journeys that we're taking them on. And that's been, for us already, a game changer.
Yeah, that's amazing. So are there things there that you think that how long do you think that we've been working together now? What is it?
4, maybe 5 months?
4 or 5 months?
Yeah.
It's not a long period of time.
No.
In fact, like when you think about moving to an entirely new, you can call it a CRM, I guess a lot of people would call it a CRM, but let's just call it like the central system of your company.
Yeah.
Moving that in 4 or 5 months, you would think that, you really still kind of would be in setup phase. So just in that period of time, like, are there things that you feel like you've changed your opinion of, or that things that you've noticed that maybe you thought might work and are seeing working, or what's the main things that you've sort of noticed during that?
I'd say I'm open-minded generally. I'm quite open-minded to change. I'm open-minded to ways of things being done. I want to see fact before I will take just a cast-iron opinion on things. And I think I didn't expect some of the outcomes that we've had to come quite so soon. And I had almost preempted that within the wider business. Guys, this is going to take up to a year for us to really start to reap the reward and get the benefits. But some of the quick wins, because ultimately, look, everybody wants to see some sort of instantaneous return, don't they? Otherwise, your patience starts to wear thin, But just through creating journeys around certain tools that we've been provided within the Lifecycle platform, we've seen already instant results from those. So nurture journeys that we've created where our agents are then posting content out that takes the client on a journey and then has led to an immediate result. We're talking what I quantify as an immediate result is a listing.
Yeah.
And or a sale, and the way in which the Lifecycle platform tells us which buyers are engaging with our content and our properties, and so they're our immediate go-to. It's streamlining a lot of the way in which we interact with people.
Yeah, it's an amazing. I mean, I went through that journey myself as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. That's why I built the Lifecycle system, to try to bring this to a estate agency, because when my eyes were opened to that way of working, it's like you sort of think, how would you do this any other way? If I don't know who to speak to, and it's quite amazing, really, because 4 or 5 months ago, you didn't know that information.
No,
you didn't know when a potential vendor was on your website or reading a piece of content or being active in some way, or and then you start to work that way, and you think, what's the other option? That's mental.
Well, I think it's seeing it in action. I think that's the big thing that we're bringing to life now for our partners. I as soon as I spoke to Toby and I knew Rob, and obviously I'd seen your content, but as soon as I'd spoken to Toby and we kind of looked at the Lifecycle platform in more detail, I can just see how we can make this work.
Yeah. And
I think the big thing for me is seeing it as a whole. Don't judge it based on the independent moving parts. You have to look at how it's going to serve your business as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I often have that conversation with people, because your business is slightly different, as we said before. Like, you're bringing on people in a self-employed model and showing them a new way of working.
Yeah.
If you're a traditional estate agent in every sense of the word, and you're just going to tell your staff, right, we're now going to work this other way, that could be a more
difficult transition,
difficult journey.
Yeah.
It's not that you can't do it, but you'll face some resistance.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, like, you're going to have to add it all together and see if this gives you a net positive, and then you're going to have to accept the things that you're losing, because there isn't a like, the iPhone, it's great, it's better than my Nokia was, but my Nokia battery used to last a week. But the iPhone's a net positive. Right?
Yeah. Fair comment. Yeah, absolutely.
So you can't have everything you used to have and all of the good stuff. And if all you do is come along and go, oh, well, it hasn't got this, you're just going to find yourself in a situation whereby the other side of the table is going, yeah, but it has got this. And it's like, yeah, but it hasn't got this. Yeah, but it has got this. So what do you want? And what direction are you trying to go in? Are you happy with where you are with your business at the moment, and you really just want an incremental improvement because your software's got a bit slow? That's fine. You should go and find that. Lifecycle is not that. Lifecycle is, I want a completely different way of working. I'm a bit worried about the future of a estate agency, and I feel like there could be a better way, and I'd like to investigate it with some support around the outside of how that way of working works, the technology to put it in place, like maybe the coaching to help me along my way, more than just the idea of, well, I'm quite happy with the way I run my estate agency. I'd like a better user interface to my software. That's all I wanted.
And I think that's what I meant by viewing it as the whole. So I'm not just talking about the technology. I'm not just talking about the automations or the journeys or the audience. I'm talking about the coaching, even down to the way in which we launched with Lifecycle, the process that Kelly took us through. It's just so well thought through and so well delivered and immersive that I think the big piece that people have to consider if they're looking at changing the way in which they operate, and it is an operational change, is do you want to have easier reach of clients? Do you want to be able to serve your clients in a much more streamlined way without having to have a lot of human beings involved? And as we know with human beings, there's always room for fault. Whereas technology, unless it blows up, it just keeps doing the job it's supposed to do. And our view was, how can we make our partners' lives easier?
Yeah.
Lifecycle. How can we get our partners in front of more people? Lifecycle. How can we expand our overall reach? For me, it was simply a no-brainer in terms of all of the moving parts as a whole.
And to put that into, to balance it out, and then you had to also sacrifice, I don't know, there must have been some stuff maybe where you thought to yourself, yeah, but we'll no longer be able to, I don't know, maybe there was something that you used to do. At this point in time while we're recording it, Lifecycle doesn't do printed brochures, for instance. Right?
We've never done them.
But was there anything where you sort of thought to yourself, like, these are the positives you just said, we want bigger reach, we want to serve our customers, we want to do all of this, we want to see who's active, we want all of those things. There must have been a couple of things, but we're not going to be able to do this, or
the only, and it's so trivial, the only thing that our group of agents have had to compromise on is the number of photos we can add to a listing. Yeah. That is literally, in my view, while I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking to me and querying that, it's the only real compromise that I can think.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
That we've had to make.
And that's only there, the reason that that's there is because Rightmove used to have a rule years ago, and it's never been changed. It's reasonably easy to change, it's just not been a high enough priority, but it's an interesting one that of everything else. Because before this, it wasn't like you went from being employed with PurpleBricks to being having your own company straight into Lifecycle. You had a different estate agency software before this, right?
Do you know, we've been through the mill a little bit, and when we first launched the business, we did talk to you guys. Right. We looked at Lifecycle, and actually the way in which we've interacted with Lifecycle since is it's changed our decision-making processes in terms of who we go into business with and what partnerships we have.
Interesting. Can you talk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. It's an easy one. It was the decision initially was driven by cost, not by quality, not by what we were going to gain. Yeah. We were trying to keep our costs low. And in hindsight, on reflection, based on what I'm already seeing in terms of impact in our business, it was the wrong decision to have made. I quite often, because I get a lot of people reach out to me who are in the industry that either run businesses or are looking at launching their own businesses, and quite often say, well, who would you recommend we talk to? I know you use Lifecycle, but would you recommend them? And I liken, so the first platform that we used, I liken them to, I'm very much an iPhone user. I like the simplicity, I like the user face, the user interface. I like the way in which it's just clean. Whereas I liken it to Android. that previous, the first one. Because it felt complex. It felt overly complex. It felt like you had to, in order to do something here, i.e. put an offer into that, you have to do this, and this, that's completely unrelated to get to here. And it just felt laborious. And that lasted 4 months. And we switched, and the CRMs, we've had 2 prior to Lifecycle. The CRM we then switched to, they were great, faultless. Yeah. Service was fantastic. They were really, really well-oiled in respect of how they looked after us, and the platform itself was good. But in my opinion, it was simply a CRM. Yeah. And we were looking for the next level, and hence why.
Interesting. And it's a funny one because, you say like it wasn't the right decision at the time, or perhaps it was the wrong decision at the time because it was based around cost, but maybe it wasn't, maybe like, Lifecycle Lifecycle isn't for everybody. It's not always going to be the best choice for everybody, is it? And, you've come on a journey that's been successful. So, maybe that just wasn't the right time for it.
I do think, I agree. I think it's only for people that are prepared to be open-minded to change. People will say it out loud, I'm open to change and I want to advance and I want to innovate. But the reality is deep down, they're not.
No, that's right. You've got to be willing.
They want it, but they're not prepared to compromise.
Certainly if you've got a team, even if that team is small, you've got to be willing to go to war and have a fight with your team over the fact that you want to change and that's where, because people say, I'm open to it. Yeah, we want this. And then, when their team give them some grief, they're like,
the biggest challenge, I would say the biggest challenge is it's education around how to use it and how to get the most from it. Because some feedback has been, well, okay, at the front end, I've got to do a lot more than I had to do before. Okay, but at the back end, it's going to be far more valuable to you, because what happens at the back end if you fill it incorrectly here and you do this properly at this end, is at this end, it's just being done for you. Yeah. You're not having to keep coming back to it all the time.
That's right. But it's hard when I was saying before we started recording again, like an estate agent's day is already full of things to do. So adding a bit of extra work in is very complicated, unless you're going to also drop some other work. And that's the bit that's hard for people to get their head around. Yeah. Like we said before, you're going to have to slow down to speed up. Yes, there's a few extra fields you're going to need to fill out when booking a viewing. You can't just quickly bang it out on the phone and blah, 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 and I don't really care about the rest of it. I wanted to put it in the system. No, there were some extra things that had to go in. Oh, that's a pain. Yeah, but it's in the grand scheme of it, it saved you hours of work.
Yeah. Or potentially lost business.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way we're now starting to see the green shoots with our partners going, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Because they need to see the results, and we're finding ways to show them the results.
We often have this issue with a new user, for instance. When you book a viewing inside Lifecycle, as you'll probably know, they have to have a search profile that matches that kind of property.
Yeah.
And the reason this came about was because when we were building the foundations of Lifecycle, we obviously liaised with a lot of estate agents and their owners and different people and asked their opinions. And the question was, if I'm registered with your estate agency looking for a one-bedroom flat up to 150,000, and I then phone up and say I'd like to view a 3-bedroom house at 350, are you happy for the negotiator just to book the viewing, or do you want them to update the records and say, actually, this guy's also looking for 3-bedroom houses? And they were like, no, we want them to update the records. Of course we would. It was like, great, that's how we think. So you should only be able to book a viewing if you've got a search criteria that matches against, that type of property. Yeah, of course. And then you put it into practice, and they, you put it out into a busy world, and their staff go, oh, it's a pain to book viewings, and the same person who gave you the advice to make that system comes back and goes, why do you have to do that? It's like, well, you know why you have to do that. Because it will make you a better business.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to convince your staff that doing that little bit of extra work is worth it, because what's the other alternative? Like, you've just got wrong information in your system. You don't care. Right? So, like you say, it's that balance of re-education around, we're trying to let the system do much more work for you, but it can only do the work if it's got the right information.
and that's where the autopilot piece is now starting, the penny's starting to drop with the majority of the partners in our business, in so much as it's not just about booking the viewing, it's about the future relationship with that particular client. What if they have a house to sell? What if they have a need for a mortgage? What if they want to get an independent survey? What if they want security because they've just been gazumped on a different property, so they want to go down a process of being more secure in the deal?
Absolutely. What if they take their house off the market for the next 24 months? Like, were they just going to disappear into our archive, or are we going to stay in touch with them?
And that's the big penny drop moment is starting to come. I can see it. As you say, we've been with you 4 or 5 months. We're still doing this. We've not hit the top of the cusp of the mountain just yet, but I can definitely see those green shoots appearing in the way in which people are engaging and then going, okay, I've got more time back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We know, whenever, if I get to speak to a client who's just about to sign up and they say, oh, it's a big investment for me, Mark, I just say to them, just follow the process.
Yeah.
I can tell you 100% you're going to love it unless you go off on a tangent and do your own shit. And you may still love it, but it's less predictable. Yeah. I can tell you 100% you're going to love it if you do what you're supposed to do. Do the coaching programs, do the launch programs, do the academy, do that. No question about it. It's impossible for it not to work out well for you. So that's interesting. So how did you find the whole process? And you can be completely honest about this. The whole process of, a lot of people get quite daunted by the idea of moving CRM. So how was the process?
Migration of data and all that sort of stuff.
How did you find all that?
Well, we worked through it with Kelly. As I say, Kelly was absolutely brilliant. It was me and my business partner, Jack, I think it's an entrepreneurial attitude, potentially. You could say I'm wrong. We're impatient. We want to do things quickly.
Yeah.
We want to do them right, but we also want to do them quickly. Well, you can't have it both ways. And Kelly was very good at managing us.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
Very, very good at keeping that. Guys, you got to slow down.
Yeah.
Like you say, go slow to go fast.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to go to Kelly's meetings for that reason.
Because you want to go quicker.
Yeah, she's like, Mark, you'll just fuck the whole meeting up.
Yeah.
Go away.
And that tends to be what happens when I'm in meetings. It's kind of like the Tasmanian Devil's arrived and then he fucks off and then...
we can go back to what we were doing before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Ignore what he just said, carry on with what you're doing. But Kelly really kept everything on track really, really cleanly. The migration of data, she introduced us to someone. I'm very much a case of, can it be automated, delegated, or do we have to do it? And so she introduced us to someone that we basically gave them access. They migrated the data for us, and for what it cost, it was an absolute no-brainer. We'd still be migrating data now if we were doing it ourselves.
Yeah. It's a funny one, isn't it? Because I think most estate agents would be comfortable having the conversation with a potential seller about, it's about value rather than fee.
Yeah.
But, they also can often struggle to
it's a conflict.
Implement that in their own.
It blows my mind. It really does. The whole value offset against cost. And we fell into that trap at the outset, like I say. Budget-led rather than actual appreciation.
Although you were a new business.
Yeah, but we did see the value, but it was more a case of, can we do it now?
Yeah.
And you're probably right. Maybe as a business, we weren't at a point where we would have probably embraced it the way we should have done, and now we are at a place where we can. But it is a complete conflict and almost contradiction.
It is, isn't it? Because that is the whole pitch of an estate agent.
Yeah. You want your client to appreciate the value that they're investing in, but yet you don't want to invest in the highest caliber to serve them.
Yeah. I'll do the data myself because, we'll save a bit of money. You won't save money. You're going to spend weeks doing this.
Time is the most valuable thing that anybody owns.
At the end of it, you won't have imported anything because you've got other shit to do. Okay, so what about things like, can you see now, or maybe you've always been able to see it, but, artificial intelligence, all of that sort of stuff is a big buzzword at the moment. I think it's almost become overused now. I think people, it's almost a turn off when you see something about artificial intelligence now. But we know that, unless you've been sort of living under a rock, everyone has got a good idea that artificial intelligence is making its way into the workplace and all of that sort of stuff. And we've been talking about this since 2016. And what we've been talking about, or what I've been talking about primarily, is artificial intelligence works if you have very structured data in a certain way. The problem that I could see when I started building Lifecycle, when we came into this industry, was that estate agency doesn't work that way. All estate agency software is very unstructured data, like what we were just saying about the viewings. I can book a viewing with Mr. M and no telephone number, no real information. I just want to get it in the diary. That's one way of working. It'll become a bit more of a ball ache if the system made you enter their full details so that it could go and find them in social media, and it could put ads in front of them. And it'd be a ball ache if you had to then put in what their criteria was to the exact detail. But what will happen in the end game of that is that you'll have structured data. If I put artificial intelligence on your system, what happens is, instead of there being something like ChatGPT that's available for anybody, you end up with something that's only you can do, because you're the one that has the information that the system's going to use to create whatever the golden tool is. It needs that information to come back. Is that something that you're aware of as you started to go into this journey, or are you starting to see how that works clearer now? Or
I can certainly see. I think the simplest way to process what you're sharing there is you essentially have two camps, don't you? You have the camp that want to do everything quickly, but actually it's a very short term, can't see past the end of the nose viewpoint, because then you've just got a muddle of data that does nothing for you and you have to continually process.
Archive it.
Absolutely, or archive. And there's thousands upon thousands of pounds probably being archived. And that's the short term. I want it now, I want it quickly. That's that attitude. And then you've got the other side of that fence. And I do fall into the impatient camp, but I also have a longer term view of, okay, if we do it properly here in 2023, what value is we going to see in our business in 24, 25, 26 and beyond?
Yeah.
And so, and how much easier are our lives going to be then? So if we've got to put in a little bit of graft now, but get the end result.
And the moats you're building as well around the company, because when someone else clocks on, they can't, there's nothing that, you can't do that quickly. No,
to insulate the business as well. So, but in answer to your question, yes, I can absolutely see how AI can then go hand in hand with how a model like ours is working, certainly in terms of how it will support and promote partner agents, but also the wider business, how the customer's journey will be so bespoke. It just all comes down to the input, because the output will just be done, but if provided the input is on point.
It's brilliant. Yeah, it's a good way of explaining it. I think also, like, a lot of people see it as one or the other. You know, I want results now, and life cycle sounds great, but it's all long term. It's like it's not. They're not exclusive of one another. You can still do the stuff you were going to do. You can still go and knock on doors if you want to, and send touting letters, and do whatever you want. Yeah. But why are you not even thinking that you would like next year to be easier and the year after that to be easier, or do you just want to do this forever?
Well, we talk about it with new partners that we launch into the marketplace. It's very much a case of, in the first month for free, you are going to have 90% of your day is all proactive work. You've got to go out and find your business, build it, promote yourself, build your personal brand. So 90% of your time is spent doing proactive activity, and that becomes laborious if you're not seeing a return. Well, what we want to try and do is get you as quickly as possible away from that 90%, get you towards 80 to 70 to 60 through organic interactions, through the way in which people engage with the content on our social media channels. So it's about making your life a year from now easy. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more, because, you know, every market, it doesn't matter if you're an estate agent or selling software or you're selling hamburgers, whatever you're doing, there's some low-hanging fruit sitting in your marketplace where people are waiting for what it is that you're about to offer them. Great, go and get it. But as you say, like, after that, you can't just, you know, I saw something on social media the other day where an estate agent had posted, they'd been to one of their properties and they'd posted this picture where they had lined up all the touting letters that had arrived at the property. I saw that. About 15 of them. Yeah. And I just put up a post saying, like, you can't do this and try and charge a premium fee. And someone said, well, I disagree. I've done that, and we've been really successful. We've got a lot of listings from it. And what I was trying to explain to them is that I'm not saying you won't get listings from it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. What I'm saying to you is that you wouldn't need to do it if you were busy. Like, if you were so busy you couldn't take on any more customers, you wouldn't need to send letters to people asking if they'd leave their agent and come to you. Why did that person not choose you in the first place? Because you didn't have a long-term outlook. You've stayed in the short-term outlook of, there's some low-hanging fruit out there. You're stuck in this. And I'm going to go looking for it. Yeah.
And the only time you won't go looking for it is when you're so busy that you're not bothered. This person chose not to go with us. A great example, like, we practice what we preach. We're not making stuff up. You didn't choose our software. We didn't chase you. We didn't send you letters, and our sales people didn't phone you, and nothing happened. We just put you in a nurture system, and that system stayed in contact with you, and it 7-Eleven forward you. And when the moment was right, you thought, well, I think I should use those people.
You guys remained present for the 2 years or so that was the gap between us launching and
no
joining.
one wants to run a business and think, oh, you'll do a deal in 2 years. But hopefully you're going to be around in 2 years, so why not?
But that's the whole hunting and farming analogy, isn't it? Who is likely to live longer, a hunter or a farmer?
Absolutely.
Because you can run out of food if you're constantly hunting, whereas a farmer, they built their farm and they just have to nurture it. And so it's getting to that point, but it's almost easier to adopt the mindset of hunting all the time.
Well, I think, you guys are a great example. You started out the business and you liked the sound of life cycle. You didn't go with it, but really and truthfully, you probably needed to do some hunting.
Yeah.
And okay, if you had unlimited funds, why not start life cycle
if we
earlier?
were financially
but the key thing at the time was we need to do some hunting. This sounds great, but if I've got £1,000 to spend, I kind of need this to spend it on this. And then you've moved over to like, okay, great. Now we're a bit more established. We can start setting up our farms, and we can hopefully start building those moats and
absolutely
live a bit longer and relax.
And now was the right time to do it for us as well. As you shared earlier, we are on a growth trajectory, but this coming 12-month period, 2024, as we hit the calendar year, that is the year that we look to grow more significantly. And so we spent year one testing, breaking things, spending money that we probably in hindsight wasted, but actually it was a great lesson to have learned, because we've then moved on and we've evolved, and that includes our transition to you. Year two was about stabilizing the business structure, support mechanisms, making sure that everything's robust. Now it's a case of right now we grow, and that's why the decision to move to Lifecycle came when it did, because we wanted everything to be robust. We've got 15 partner agents. It's not easy, but easier to transition them than it is 25, 30, 40, 50 people.
And I guess also, like, obviously you guys have got, some unique selling points as to why the avenue is so appealing to self-employed agents. But I guess, almost accidentally, Lifecycle is kind of tailor-made for that model.
Well, it complements our ability to support our partner agents in a much more robust way.
Yeah, because a normal CRM is sort of, you could do it, but, and there's pros and cons to it, but I'm just sort of thinking off the top of my head, with the way that Lifecycle will automatically put people on journeys, and that journey could be specific to that agent, the way that you can say to them, well, we'll make content, don't worry, we'll post stuff on social media, we'll do your newsletters, we'll make the activity that you haven't got time to do, and you can just look into the rock section and see the 5 people that you're supposed to call. Is pretty appealing for somebody if they're just working on their own, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's great. Okay, so final question then. Do you have any thoughts on where you see the market going, both in terms of when you think it might start to pick back up again, if you think it will pick back up again, and just where you see the market going generally in terms of, I don't know, consolidation of estate agents, expansion of estate agents, more self-employed, less self-employed, just generally your sort of views on all of that?
Okay, so hard to predict a turn, but I would envisage that we're going to see a year of 2024 being quite tricky. At the end of the day, we're in Ireland, so house prices are always going to come back because we're going to run out of room to build, and so therefore house prices will always have that cyclical 10-year growth. So I do think that 2025 will start to see a bit more stability and then a bit of a return, maybe a little bit sooner, but that would be my vision, if you like. In terms of the direction of travel for the industry, of course I'm biased. I run a self-employed model. But actually, when you look at the structure, the funding, the way in which people can have more autonomy but earn more money, the only barrier to entry for estate agents, in my opinion, and the reason why we're not seeing more people, because there is a heavy number of people transitioning to self-employed, but the reason we're not seeing that doubling or tripling is because of a lack of funding. The lack of get-go finance to get them started.
Yeah.
I would say that of the people we've spoken to this year, there would be 12 more people in our business right now if they had the funding available to launch themselves. And that's the biggest barrier for most. I think we will almost certainly see, especially next year, low-cost, high-volume agencies are already struggling. The likes of, we talked about them already, PurpleBricks, have never been profitable, yet we've been through one of the best marketplaces that the industry has seen.
Crazy. You can't make a profit if you
and yet you can't make, yet we're in a lower volume and they're still low cost. How on earth can those businesses survive longer term without continual city investment? So I do see a huge transition coming.
Yeah.
I think the momentum is building. I think the 2.0 of self-employed estate agency, PurpleBricks, started it. I do believe that they started the comfort, if you like, of people going self-employed. But now I think the 2.0 version just provides so much more. And I would say that by 2030, we will see a big shift, big shift.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting. I can't disagree with any of that. Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks very much for coming in. If anybody has heard any of this and they're thinking to themselves, that's really interesting, I'd quite like to ask, James, something like, I don't know, what's the best social media platform for them to sort of find you on or reach out to?
Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn. So James Humphries-Stone, I'm quite easy to find. I'm the only one that exists. It's the last time I looked. So quite easy to find. So on any of those platforms. And I'm always open. I speak to a lot of people all the time that, as I said earlier, that are looking at launching their own businesses, whether it's in partnership with our brand or whether they're just looking at doing it standalone. I'm always open to helping in any way that I can. So if people want some advice on whether or not life cycle is good for them, and I will, Mark, you said it yourself, you're not for everyone.
Yeah.
I will share whether or not I believe it would be right for them. Then get in touch.
Awesome. Thanks very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests, and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check, whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed. And then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.